Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. You know, one of the things about my show that I am very proud of is that I am not afraid to question the norms. I'm not afraid to talk about time. As a matter of fact, I have an unhealthy obsession with time. And right now, the timing of this episode might seem kind of weird. Summer has just gotten started, and here I am talking about things that are probably a little bit more suited to the fall, suited to cooler weather, the season where my favorite holiday lives, Halloween. My next guest is no exception to the rule. I really enjoyed my conversation with him. There is not another person on this world that could describe what he does better than he can. So with that said, why don't you watch this clip, and then we'll move forward with the episode.
My name is Zak Wenzel, and for the past 10 years, my crew and I have been investigating the paranormal, spending overnight in some of the most haunted locations to try and debunk claims of spirits and manifestations, while also trying to find proof of the afterlife. Along the way, we've experienced terrifying unexplained phenomena, and have further learned the truth behind life after death. These are our journeys, our adventures. Together, we are unstoppable. Together, we are Blood Moon Paranormal.
I am happy to welcome my friend Zak Wenzel to the show today. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. As always, listener and viewer discretion is advised. Friends, Halloween season will be here before you even know it. Okay, friends, it is late springtime, early summertime. You know, usually this time of year, I love getting outside. I love getting a little bit of sun. And then after a bunch of really hot days, I am just fucking over it. I've just got to be honest. And usually I tell people that the 5th of July, the day after the 4th, is the start of Halloween season for me. Yeah, it's a long ramp up, but that's when I start thinking about bonfires and cooler weather. But most importantly, it's when I really start thinking about the unknown. If you've listened to my show for any period of time, you know that I am a fan of all things mysterious and spooky. And joining me on the podcast today is my new friend, Zak Wenzel from Blood Moon Paranormal. Zak, how the heck are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Obviously, I just let out all that word vomit on you, and
No, I'm here with you.
So where are you at in the world right now?
So I am in Joliet, Illinois, 45 minutes from Chicago. So
okay, is that where you're based out of then?
Yeah, I've been here my whole life. So
well, I don't want to stall too long with it. Why don't you tell my listeners about Blood Moon Paranormal and kind of your origin story?
So back in 2008, I was 8 years old, and I moved to this neighborhood. I've always been in Joliet, but just kind of moved over here. And this street doesn't have a lot of younger kids on it. It's a lot of older adults and stuff like that. So I was pretty lonely, but then eventually a couple weeks went by and this kid came over and knocked on my door, and he's like, "Hey, I come every other weekend to spend the night at my grandparents' house, and I heard you were new in the neighborhood. Do you want to go play some GameCube at my house?" I'm like, "Absolutely. I love GameCube, gotta play some Mario Kart." So we went a couple doors down to his house, and we went inside, and his house is kind of older. It's a grandparents' house, so, kind of got that old feel to it. And we went to the TV in the living room, and it's one of those old TVs that has the reflection to the TV screen. And I saw this painting in the reflection, and it was this creepy little girl, and she was frowning. When we turned around and we looked at it, she was smiling. And I was like, that's a little weird. He's like, yeah, I don't really like to like think about it. I just kind of turn the game on and start playing. So that's what we did. And yeah, so that's kind of the first experience I had with that. A couple years later, 2012, I started getting into the ghost shows. So I was watching Ghost Adventures. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but that's what I started watching first. And I was like, I kind of want to experience something. I want to experience something for myself because I don't know how I feel about this. So I was talking with my friend that is down the street, and I was like, hey, I want to go do this. Let's find a place. Let's go explore it. And his sister overheard us talking about it, and she's like, hey, there's this place 2 hours south in Peoria, Illinois. It's an old asylum, and it's abandoned. All you got to do is sneak in through the pool area, and you can get inside, and it's apparently really active. We're like, okay. So I tell my mom about it. My mom is really cool. She's a really cool lady. She decided, okay, I'm going to drive these 13-year-old and 12-year-old kid down to Peoria to go breaking into an abandoned place and see what's going on. So we get down there and we pull up, and the whole building, this limestone building, is lit up in purple lights. We're like, this isn't abandoned. Like, so we start walking up, and I always tell this part of the story because I'll never forget it. We get up there, and a guy comes out, and he's in a southern accent says, y'all here for the ghost tour? We're like, all right, well, we are now. So we signed up for the ghost tour. We paid for it, and we did it. I experienced some things that night, and since then I've been on my journey to try to experience those again and capture it.
One of the things I read in your bio is that you're not only trying to explore new paranormal places, but you're also trying to debunk them. And I think that is a very unique aspect to it. A lot of guys kind of do the investigation, something drops in the background. Oh, did you hear that? And it's something all crazy and weird, but you're actually there to kind of try and disprove things. And it kind of becomes the catalyst for what you experience. So how did you go from that ghost tour to starting your own investigational organization and such?
It was 2012 when we first went to this asylum, and me and my friend at the time, we had a YouTube channel priorhand where we were doing like kind of sketch comedy in a sense, I guess, if you want to call it comedy, right? He was wearing this orange like morph suit, and we would go out in public, and we went to the mall and stuff like that, and all this random BS, So I kind of started YouTube like that, and then after he graduated, or I'm trying to think, sorry, he had stopped coming over as much. So I kind of wanted to keep making videos with something. And I started talking to some friends, met some people in middle school. And I was like, I kind of want to start a YouTube channel, and there's like this stuff that I like to do. It's ghost hunting. And the first guy I talked to, his name was Jake. And he was like, yes, absolutely. He's like, I want to experience this kind of stuff too. And he kind of joined me. It was me and him for a little bit. And then he's like, oh, I know some other people that are interested. And I'm like, oh, wait, I know them too. And he's like, yeah, let's just bring them on, And so we brought them on. We created a channel called Fear Reality, and it was paranormal. It was pranks, gaming, and I did magic tricks at the time. So I was doing like YouTube magic and stuff like that. So it was like a cluster of items all into one channel. And I was like, this is like a unique concept that like no one else is really doing, like combining these things. And a falling out happened, unfortunately. And in 2015, I was 15 years old in high school, and I rebranded to Blood Moon Paranormal. I told them, the people that I was still kind of okay with on the other side of things, hey, if you want to come join me for this, we're just doing paranormal here. You're more than welcome to. Eventually, I made up with the people that I had issues with, falling out with, and they also came back. So everybody came back over to Blood Moon from Fear Reality, but we just kept doing the paranormal stuff instead of everything else. So
where are some of the most known places where you've documented experiences and investigations?
Um, I have been all over. I've been to Waverly Hills Sanatorium. I've been to the Conjuring House, the Villisca Axe Murder House, Pennhurst Asylum. I've been to the Ohio State Reformatory, or Shawshank, some people know it as. Um, Going to a ton of cool places this year that have been major bucket list items of mine. So just 10 years of going all over the place.
Of those places that you've explored, where have you found the most activity, if you will, for lack of a better word?
I'll give you three because I can't,
Perfect.
they're pretty wild. So the first one is actually right here in my hometown, the old Joliet prison, literally 10 to 15 minutes away from my house. That place is so active. When we first got in there, I could not believe the amount of stuff we were getting. You know, it was like a lot of noises, a lot of interacting and stuff like that. Second place is Pennhurst Asylum. I mean, that place, a lot of sad history there. So you're getting a lot of different energy coming through from these mentally disabled people coming through and finally voicing a voice that they didn't have back then. And then most recently, we went to a place called Harriman Hospital down in Tennessee, and that place blew our socks off. It was absolutely insane.
So you're documenting all of these things, you're editing it together, you're throwing it up on your YouTube channel. What's something specific that you caught on camera that just shocked the hell out of you, that just made you go, people are going to think this is staged? It's so real to me in this moment, but people are going to think this is staged, because I know every paranormal investigator has that story.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say something that was half caught on camera because it was one of those moments for me in the situation where I was like, I can't believe that this just happened, and nobody's going to believe me that this just happened. So I was at the Villisca Axe Murder House. This was my fourth time back at this point, and we do this thing on our channels. I'm sorry. We do this thing on our episode where we spend 15 minutes alone in a spot in whatever location we're at. And I was doing an isolation, we call them, in the living room of the house. So I was sitting on the couch, and from the couch, you can see into the kitchen, and you can see the back door in the kitchen. So you can see straight through. It's a straight line right there. And I was doing an EVP session in the house by myself, and I was asking about the killer. And next thing you know, the back door swings open. And on the recording, if you listen back to it, you can hear what sounds like the latch coming undone, and then it swings open. Yeah. And I just froze. I was just like, the back door just opened. The back door just opened. And then I got up and I grabbed the camera and I swung around to try to show that it's open. And it wasn't necessarily on camera. It just happened to me. And the worst part about it is that I literally, before we started filming, I set a camera up to face into that direction. And then last second, I decided, I don't know about that, because I feel something weird from this room over here. I move the camera towards the other room. And of course, the door opens in the room that the camera is no longer facing. So, yeah, it was the worst feeling, but I just could not believe that it happened.
Anytime I have somebody from the paranormal community on my show, I have to, of course, drop the fact that I did the second episode of my podcast in the Villisca Axe Murder House in the children's bedroom with Johnny Hauser, because Johnny's a good friend of mine. And one of the weirdest things that happened to me was, I've never had to do this before, and you being an audio video guy, you're going to understand this. I had volume spikes throughout the entire episode that I've never had happen, and they were just random volume spikes. I had to go through and edit that episode literally line by line by line. I've never had to do it since. I didn't do it before. It was just that Only time I've had to do that. And everybody that has gone to the Villisca Axe Murder House has some weird story about it. And Johnny himself has talked about the fact that maybe because there have been so many paranormal investigations at that particular location, that maybe the activity has been heightened by the presence of people coming and going and coming and going. So how would you define that? How would you define what spirits are and what you experience in places like that and at the Villisca Axe Murder House in particular?
That's a good question. That's a really good question, actually. So I just want to start out by saying that, like, that house, I think the biggest thing that it suffers from at the moment is a misidentity crisis. It's, we're talking over 100 years of people not knowing who that murderer is. I don't think the kids are there. I don't think the family's there at all anymore. I think that they've moved on. Wherever moved on is, I don't know, but I think that they've moved on, and I think that whatever is there is either the killer, like, period, just the killer, right? Or so many people have created stories and so many people have talked about this that it's created its own identity and its own
I was
identity
hoping you were going to go there. I don't
Yeah.
mean to cut you off, but I was hoping you were going to go there because that is a commonality that I've heard from people. It's like, we don't even know if whatever is there is even associated with that house anymore.
Yeah. That's the craziest thing about it is, like, and what I mean, even if it is the killer, let's say that it is just the killer, that's what's there, right? I think that it doesn't know who he or she is anymore. Everybody's coming in there saying, "Oh, is it Reverend George Kelly? Is it that's my main one. I don't know the other ones that well off the top of my head, but the other killers, right? So is it Reverend George Kelly, Mansfield? I think one of them was Blackford, maybe. I don't know, but everyone's accusing him of being a different person. And I feel like maybe after 100 years of that, is whoever this is confused about who they are. You know what I mean? Because when we went there all 4 times, it's very strange because we get different evidence pointing towards different people. And same thing for everyone else that goes there. They get different evidence pointing towards different people being the killer. And one of them, I believe, was German or French. But I remember one time we were getting French or German words coming through. And I don't know. It's like it's trying to fit that identity that people are pushing onto it. I personally think it's Reverend George Kelly that did it. But again, we'll never know.
It kind of makes you wonder if, because of its history and because of all the folklore associated with it and the large number of traffic that it attracts, has it kind of become a portal in a crazy way? You know what I mean? Whether it be spiritual, whether it be multidimensional, because that's another theory that's been thrown around. Which leads me to a good question. What defines a spirit with the experience that you've had? What defines a spirit? Is it something from the afterlife? Is it a multidimensional creature? Is it something from like a heaven or hell or something along those lines? What defines a ghost and a spirit?
Well, for me, and this is just my theories and my opinions on it. I believe spirits and ghosts and that kind of stuff is just energy. And I know some people think of like, oh, spiritualism or, kind of like Wiccanism in a sense when I say that, but I am very, and I mentioned this to you, I'm very science oriented. So a lot of the way I investigate, I go based off of scientific theory, and I try to, at least. I know this is a pseudoscience, but I try to incorporate science as much as possible. And I think that when we pass, the energy in our brains. Now, when I say energy, I'm talking about the waves. in our brains, there are nodes that are passing off radio signals in a sense. Those radio signals, they are similar to what we use when we're in our car, right? But their frequencies are to our brains, to our minds. And I believe those waves are a cluster. And when we pass, those clusters come out of us and can manipulate different waves within the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's how we have activity happening, right? So that is the spirit to me, is those brainwaves, our consciousness in a sense. And I mean, all of our equipment is based on the electromagnetic spectrum. I mean, you have EMF meters, those are electromagnetic forces. You have the spirit box, those are radio waves. You have the IR cameras, which people seem to pick up more shadow figures and spirits and stuff like that on the IR cameras. Those are a wavelength, right? And I mean, I've tried different experiments with photons and wavelengths and atoms and stuff like that throughout our research and our journeys, and the results are always super interesting. So I'm just kind of rambling at this point about it, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on spirits and ghosts.
No, I love that because it lends itself to the whole idea of frequency and vibration and things beyond, you know, our knowledge. I think about some of the fringe conspiracies that have come out in recent years, and some of them I spend way too much time focusing on. One in particular is the whole Mandela effect and like what happened in 2012 and the Large Hadron Collider and the whole CERN facility. But it's crazy because if you go down those rabbit holes, sometimes there are things that manifest themselves through that research where like, shit, there could be some substance to this. Are there any fringe conspiracies along those lines, involving the spiritual, involving our existence on this plane, that you pay a lot of attention to, specifically being scientifically minded?
There's not too many I pay attention to. There's a couple that I've like kind of dove into and lost sleep over, but that's why I try not to, is because I will lose sleep over it. I guess one is the time slip theory, where it's like where we are the ghosts to people in the past or the future, and they are the ghosts to us. So
Whoa.
That's the only one that I've kind of dove into and lost sleep over, but I try not to too much. I try to just stick to my own research, and if anybody brings a theory up to me, I'll listen and I'll be like, interesting. I'll have to see if that applies to mine.
Well, just recently I made a trip, and before we started recording, I asked you if you had ever been there to the Museum of Shadows in Omaha, Nebraska. It's very similar to the Paranormal Museum in Las Vegas, where it's artifacts that have allegedly taken on spirits, if you will. It was fascinating. And if you ever get a chance to explore it, you should check it out, which kind of brings up another question. Why do spirits inhabit places and things, theoretically? What is your theory behind that?
In terms of places, my assumption is that either they pass there, or this is a place that they're familiar with or happy with, I don't know why that is, why they choose that, or how that's chosen in theory. But that's just kind of where my theory, I need to work on it, right? It's a theory. So in terms of objects, I didn't really believe in that kind of stuff until a couple years ago when I got my own haunted object. His name is Robert. He is an old dummy, like a puppet kind of deal.
Yeah, like a ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was could have been coincidence 100%, but I had an Ovilus 5 out, and when I got him, I had him on a shelf, and I put the Ovilus 5 next to him, and I was just kind of in my room just hanging out, and I'm like, hey, what's your name? And right after I said that, it came through, it said Robert. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, Robert. All right. So when we do conventions, and we haven't done too many this year, I usually like to take them with just so he could travel with me. Um, and we put them out on our table and kind of let people walk by. And we've had several psychic mediums walk by and different people like that touch them, and they're like, they describe him and they are pretty accurate, all in between how he looks. Obviously, I don't know how he looks, but they are all saying the same thing at different places, and they've gotten the name Robert. I don't usually like talk about it on the channel too much. He's just kind of a podcast thing or
Right.
a convention thing. So yeah, I don't.
That's crazy.
Attachments to people, though, that's another story. I have a whole story for that.
Ooh,
So.
I do want to get into that. But it does remind me of, so when I was at the Museum of Shadows, one of the objects that blew my mind was this clown statue that was sitting on the swing, and it was perfectly still. There were no vents around it, nothing. It was hanging. There's no water pipes, no anything that could cause vibration. And this thing would turn ever so slightly, and it would track with you as you would go through the room, and then it would track back. And so one of the workers walked by, and I'm like, this thing's moving. And she goes, oh yeah, he likes to show off. It was pretty crazy. And there were a few objects that were like that. And it's funny you mentioned about spirits attaching themselves to people, because that was my wife's exact fear. She goes, we can't hang out here too long because you're going to end up bringing something home. I know it. Yeah, probably. So let's talk about that. Let's talk your story about attachments to people. That's pretty compelling.
Going back to Villisca, um, so I first went there in 2014, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was 2014 I first went to the Villisca Ex Murder House. Like I said, my mom was cool. It was just her and I. She drove us out there, and we spent the night. I quit out halfway through because I was scared. And then we went back when I got my crew together. We decided to go there and check it out as a crew and film and stuff. And that was 2015. And some stuff happened in the upstairs area. We were up there, we were running a spirit box, and I asked if I can go in the attic, and something came through and said no. We're like, all right, I'll respect their wishes. A couple hours go by, we're up in the attic, or we're up in the second floor area, and something says, attic, go. And we're like, all right, well, who do you want to go? Because there's 5 of us here, right, or 4 of us here right now. We're not all shoving ourselves in there. And it said, Zach. I'm like, all right, why do you want me to go to the attic? And it says, you'll see. I'm like, all right. So I open the attic door and I sit down on the little ledge that they have there. And I'm like, all right, I'm in the attic. Now what? It says, go deeper. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I'm like, why do you want me to go deeper? And it says, you'll see. And I'm like, yeah, no. And then another spirit, a different voice comes through and it says, don't go. And I'm like, all right, close the door. I end up quitting out that night because things got kind of like, I just felt like I was in danger. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I was in danger, like something was going to happen. So I quit out. The rest of the crew investigated for the rest of the night. We left, and I just told myself, I'm like, I'm not ready to face that place. Not for a while. I was 15 years old at the time. I'm done, So 2020 happens, and I'm like, 5 years later, I want to go back. I want to go conquer this place. I want to go take it down. I want to go, confront it finally. So we schedule the investigation. I buy a full-size axe. I go to the house. I confront it. I bring a full-size axe in there. I'm confronting the killer. I'm like, hey, look, if the family is here, this is not for you. I'm not coming in here for you. I'm coming for the killer. So I go in there, I confront him and stuff like that. And we kept getting stuff all night. It was me and the rest of the people that were there last time and Emily. And stuff coming through all night was like, you've changed, you've grown. And it's like, it was so weird. It was like the same kind of voice and same kind of spirit coming through is like, you changed, you've grown and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is weird. But as soon as I brought the axe
it's like
to the
it
house,
knew you.
Yeah, it was weird. And it just completely died once we brought it in. And we brought it in later in the night. So like we got stuff during the first half of the night, and then later on we brought the axe in. I was confronting it. It said a couple things, and then it just died for the rest of the night. Well, that was my third time back. In 20, I think it was November of 2022, we went to Malvern Manor, and that place is 45 minutes from Villisca. They say that the killer may have premeditated the murders there at the hotel when it was a hotel. So I was like, all right, we're going to do this investigation. We're going to talk about the nursing home that was there, the hospital that was there. And then at the end of the night, I'm going to go confront and see if I can get that whoever to come through. So we go upstairs at the end of the night, and I start confronting it, and we're doing an Estes session, and it starts saying my name. It starts saying, like, I think it said, "You missed me," or something like that. It started saying stuff like that, and kind of related to the Axe House. And I got that feeling that I got from 2015 of that danger. I was about to get like hurt. And like I looked at Emily, I'm like, I gotta go. Like I gotta go downstairs. Like I can't be here right now. And I went downstairs. I was shaking. I was pissed off at myself. I'm like, I can't let this thing get to me. I gotta just go confront it again. So I went back upstairs, and I'm like, look, you're not doing this to me again. I'm not like I used to be. I'm telling you right now, I'm not letting you take control of the situation and making me scared. And stuff stopped coming through. Well, a couple months later, we go to another location, completely unrelated to Villisca, and it starts saying my name. It starts saying things related to Villisca. It starts saying related to the experience that I had in 2015, where it's telling me to go up. So I'm like, this is weird, but I don't know yet. Next location we go to, nothing happens. Next location after that, stuff starts coming through that's related to Villisca. That's, again, location all the way in New York. Like, whoa, from Iowa to New York. That doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So I start telling my friend about it, Ethan from Wolf Paranormal, and he's like, that's weird because back in November, stuff started coming through with Villisca for me as well. And we're like, okay. I'm like, let's book it.
Whoa.
So in April of 2023, we went back to the Axe House and confronted it, and that's when the door opened. Since then, I did tell it once I left. I'm like, if you are attached to me, you could stay here this time. That's what I said. You could stay here. Stay here. Still with me, but he has boundaries. Before I forgot to put this detail in. Before we left to the Axe House, I did go see a psychic medium that didn't know anything about the situation that was going on.
Right.
I told her that I had an attachment. I want to know what this attachment's about. She said that it is a tall shadow figure, kind of misty, with two hands on kids, like two kids with hands on it. And I asked, where does it look like he came from? She's like, kind of like a farmhouse kind of deal, like maybe like White House maybe. And I was like, all right, okay. Can you tell me maybe when he came around? She's like, you were 15.
Oh.
And I'm like, 15. So yeah. We went to the house. I told him to stay. And then like a couple months later, we went to a place called Crescent Sanatorium in prison. And he started coming through again. So we were like, all right, well, he's still here. I went to another psychic medium at a paranormal convention. She had no clue who I was. She was like a celebrity psychic medium. I'm just a YouTuber, so she had no clue who I was. And she described the same shadow figure with Misty, but one kid this time, not two, one kid this time. And said the same thing that I've had him for a while. So, yeah. Attachments, didn't believe in them until it happened to me.
It sounds like you use a lot of, or lean into a lot of mediums for assistance. Have you ever taken a medium with you on an investigation?
I have not. I'm not personally a huge fan of mediums. I did it for my own curiosity. to see if they could pick up on stuff like that. And when she said the shadow figure, I was like, all right, whatever. But when she said White House, and when I was 15, that's when I was like, all right, something's weird here, So I'm not usually a huge medium person. I think that, and no offense to anyone who is a medium, I think there's quite a few out there that are just in it for the money.
I've had a few on my show. I myself am one of the biggest skeptics. There is one that I've had on my show in particular that I think she's so money it hurts. Actually, one of the last episodes I did with our mutual friend Mike, she was on that episode with us, and we actually talked about the concept of what happens when we die. But I ask that because sometimes it's a good way to weed through the charlatans versus who's legit, but yeah, that's really interesting to know that you've had a consistent response through all the mediums that you've talked to. So let's talk a little bit about where you want to go with Blood Moon Paranormal. Speaking of our friend Mike Ritchie, it sounds like you guys just collaborated this last weekend. What kind of things do you have in the works for your channel and for your investigative team?
We kind of go year by year. This is around the time that I start planning out like maybe some ideas for next year. This year was very oriented around local locations and our bucket list. Previous years, we went to a lot of places that were like, oh, this one doesn't get investigated a lot and they offer it. We should hit it and see what's going on there. This year, we wanted to hit our big locations. So we wanted to hit like, South Pittsburgh Hospital, Brushy Mountain Penitentiary, West Virginia Penitentiary, all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to hit more local stuff. So, I mean, places within 30 minutes of our house. I was emailing businesses and just emailing them nonstop. Like, hey, like I do this. This could be good for like promoting your business. And, it could be really cool to do. And you guys could get some answers about what's going on at your places because it's historic. And I can almost guarantee you have a haunting there. Somebody said something about it. And I was getting some back. I'd say about maybe 5% of the places I emailed responded to me. And, because I emailed a lot of places. Like I was up until like 2 a.m. just sending emails out.
It's a grind, man. I appreciate that because I love that hustle.
Yeah. So we got some places that responded to me. I had a restaurant group that owns like 6 or 7 restaurants out here say like, hey, whatever building you want to investigate, that's ours. Go ahead. You could do it. And I found that only 2 of them were like kind of in historic buildings. So I was like, let's just do these 2, see how it goes. And then maybe in the future, those other ones, they were like strip malls and whatnot. So I was like, I don't think there's anything there, but if you have reports of it, I'd be willing to do it, but I want some history, So that's what we did. And we've done 5 or 6 local investigations so far. So pretty successful. It's been a great time. Very thankful for these places for letting us into their business after hours. Like it's really surreal.
I know that your space, the paranormal investigation space, YouTube creator space, is pretty crowded. I'm a podcaster. My space is pretty crowded too. I'm a former musician. That space was pretty damn crowded as well. So I know for me personally, it's all about figuring out the niche. How do I keep myself separate from the rest of the pack? How does Blood Moon Paranormal differentiate itself from other investigative teams and YouTubers?
I would say, in my personal opinion, and maybe people see this differently, but there's quite a few things that I feel separates us from a multitude of other creators. One aspect is the cinematic aspect, the editing, that kind of stuff. I went to film school, graduate actually this coming June, to better increase the quality of our videos. And since I've been to film school, the quality in cinematics, the editing, the storytelling in general have all increased. So that's a massive point to be made there, because a lot of YouTube paranormal investigators, they don't focus on that. And I get it. You know, you want your videos to be raw and everything. And I'm totally okay with that. But I wanted something that is also a creative outlet. And I know Mike is the same way. That's why I like collabing with him, because he likes to have it be a creative outlet, but also be genuine paranormal, which is another thing that I feel separates us from the other paranormal YouTubers, because a lot of them are not as genuine as they may seem. One thing that also separates us is the fact that we're not claiming demon everywhere. Right. So, yeah, right. That's another one. And yeah, I guess that's what comes to mind, especially the science aspect of things. That's another factor that you get all that combination of things together. It kind of separates us a little bit from other ones.
Really enjoyed connecting with Mike, and I am enjoying this conversation with you for the same exact reason, because I think we all kind of have a similar mindset. Even though we're involved in different spaces, it took me 131 episodes of my podcast being audio only before I was going to make the jump to video. Why? Because I don't want to look like another side-by-side Zoom video that just gets thrown up online. Oh, I've got a podcast. It's because I spend the time, I do the editing, I try and create a compelling story, and you guys are doing the same exact thing, except in the paranormal space. I love that. Quality will always supersede quantity every single time, and I wish more people would realize that. I also enjoy the fact that you are taking a very scientific approach to it. Mike does the same thing. I've asked him a lot of the same questions that I asked you, and he gives very well thought out answers to those questions. So you take all of that, and I'm going to give you a really deep question here, and you think about the spiritual realm. Let's talk about the land of the living. Do you think there is some sort of serendipity that links like-minded people such as ourselves together that might be a little bit more than just, hey, I've got a guy that I know that knows a guy that knows another guy?
Like, you meet people who you need to meet at a certain time, basically what you're saying. I don't have an answer for that. That's one of those mysteries, man. I don't have an answer for that.
There's a reason I ask that, because I do think it all correlates. You know, putting my own skepticism to the side and thinking about it, I think there are reasons people kind of come into your realm.
I think social media helps with that for sure. Algorithms and stuff. But I mean, you know, that's all I got.
Outside of the realm of the paranormal and films and such, what types of things inspire you?
I know you said outside of the realms of film, but I love horror films. That's a huge thing for me.
What's your favorite?
My favorite? Oh man, that's tough. I am a huge fan of like I love the Saw franchise. I love Scream. The Conjuring universe is really good. Insidious. I love James Wan in general. That James Wan is a phenomenal director. Huge Christopher Nolan fan. No, that's not horror, but I love Christopher Nolan and the stuff that he's done. The Shining is also another one.
Love it. Have you watched the Hell House LLC franchise?
Of course.
Nice.
Of course I have.
Nice.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite found footage films. I work at a haunted attraction, so that is right up my alley. So. Right.
I had Stephen Cognetti on like the week after Halloween. I watched the latest one, and then I just on a whim I just messaged him. And I'm like, dude, you want to do the podcast? And he's so approachable, and it sounds like he has some really cool things in the works soon to come, maybe later down the line in the Hell House LLC franchise. So
yeah, I've only seen the first two.
Oh, you got to see the newest one, the fourth one. Oh, I would say number 1 and number 4 are probably the best two, easily.
I'll have to check it out. I'll have to check it out. 'Cause
Easily.
I love those films.
Awesome, man. So my wrap-up question is another off-the-wall one, because why wouldn't it be? But what's your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it is today?
Just be kind.
I like the simplicity.
That's all I got. I know it's simple, but just be kind. You know, some people just don't know how to be nice to each other, and just be kind. And yeah.
Tell everybody that is listening or watching to this episode where they can find you online.
Well, we are Blood Moon Paranormal on everything from YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, Facebook. Used to have a podcast, but it's bad, so don't listen to that. But yeah, Blood Moon Paranormal on everything, and we try to post at least twice a month on YouTube our full investigations. We post all of our professional photography that we have done at the locations on Instagram and Facebook, and post our updates and what's going on Twitter and Facebook.
Love it. Zach, it has been a pleasure having this conversation with you. I'm glad we are now connected. The world is a much better place with you in it, my friend. I hope we can run into each other in the real world.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.